let's take a look at some older computers. Got Apple MacBook Core 2 Duo and a similar aged HP Compact, which is also a Core 2 Duo. What features did you get on computers at this time? On the PC, there's 2 USBs here, card reader, DVD drive, modem. On the back there's Ethernet, VGA, something that might be a PS2. Yeah, I think that's PS2. On the other side there's the charger connector, the vent for the heatsink, 2 more USBs, sound in and out, and Firewire, and then also a PC card. I think that's what that is, it's not Express card. Yeah, PC card. Speakers on the front. No webcam built in. Fingerprint reader. On the bottom, removable battery. Additional battery can be attached on the bottom there. Access to RAM, hard disk under this cover, and this great thing which is a docking station connector. Very useful, so that you can, got a dock here, you can connect all the things on your desk onto here, and then when you don't need to take the computer away, connect it and work just like it was a desktop computer. And then when you want to go somewhere, just disconnect it and you're away. Very useful thing. Apple doesn't seem to believe in that kind of usefulness, so you don't get that. They do have a battery level display, which is quite nice. And you can access the hard disk and RAM under the battery cover there. You get a slot loading DVD drive. You get nothing on the back. There's some vents there. On the side you get a power connector, Ethernet, a DVI, mini DVI, which is a bit annoying because you need to have an adapter to be able to use that for anything. Not sure why they decided to make another weird connector. Firewire, 2 USBs and audio in and out, and then a lock. I think that's a security lock. Oh yes, the HP one has that too, so that you can chain it to your desk. Got a webcam, it's got a widescreen. I think the HP one's wide. I think widescreen was only just becoming a thing. Ruined everyone's document creating experiences because we don't really make widescreen, we don't make landscape documents, and we don't have websites that scroll side to side, so I don't know why they put widescreens on computers. It's a bit of a waste of time. Apple charger. I don't have the folding plug thing for that, so I use this. I do have a cord that goes in there, and it's very stiff and weird feeling. I don't know why Apple wants to make their cords very stiff and springy. It's a bit bizarre, and it has these little thingies which I assume you're supposed to wrap the cord around that. That seems like a good way of wrecking it, especially to break it off there. So I'm not sure what the intent was. Maybe it's to make you buy new ones when you break the cord from twisting it too much. Strangely, there's another one. I bought a lot of Apple computers, like one lot of just random untested Apple computers, and it came with this other one which is a different size, although it's only the housing of it that's a different size. But the pins are the same, and the voltage rating of the adapter is the same. 16 volts, I think it was. 16.5 volts, 3.65 amps, which is the same as this one, but the plug's different. That seems a bit mean. I don't know if that's newer or older computers, but it doesn't fit any of the ones that I got. There's also another one that has a right angle plug on it that doesn't seem to work. I can't get that to work. I don't know if maybe the cord is broken somewhere or it's internally damaged. Maybe we'll crack it open and have a look inside. So these attach magnetically so that you can trip over your cord without breaking your computer, in theory. The HP one has a barrel jack, that sort of thing. No magnetic stuff, but it might pull out if you trip over it. But normally when you're working, you keep your cords out of the way. It's just normal good practice, so you shouldn't need to worry about tripping over them. Similar to Apple, HP computers have different plugs as well. We have some other computers here, and this time they decide to use a small one. So you got to get a different power supply, which is otherwise exactly the same voltage and current rating, but it's got a plug on it that's small. So just as good as Apple in that regard, making different power supplies with different connectors. And then even more exciting, the docking station's got another one which is a medium size, so it doesn't fit that small one and it doesn't fit this big one. So you got to get another power supply with another different plug on it to fit the docking station. Good job. There you go, that's power supplies. Let's turn on the computers. Power up this. This is a different HP one. It's slightly, I think it might be newer. It's Centrino. Is that newer or older than Core 2 Duo? I don't know, but we're going to tear this one down and we're going to tear down an Apple computer to see what they're like. But let's power them both on. This one unfortunately has a broken power connector. The center pin is gone, but we can use the docking station to power it up. The battery unit's wrecked, so can't use that. Takes this weird shape thing. And we'll turn on the Apple computer. The battery works in this, so that's good. Surprising. I don't know if someone replaced it at some point. Now the HP one's turned on itself. I probably can't see what's on the screen here because of the angle. Good Apple noise when you turn it on. Maybe the backlight's wrecked in this. It's got a starting Windows XP thing on there, but can't actually see it. Ah, well, can't get a boot time comparison because we can't see what's going on. I think it might have crashed. Anyway, the Apple computer's up and running already. So, although this does have an SSD in it, I put a new drive in there, new installation. And it wants you to sign into iMessage, but if you go create Apple ID, it just doesn't do anything, so I'm not sure you can actually do that. Oh look, this has come up now. Starting Windows XP. So this is on an old mechanical drive, so it's not really a fair comparison for boot up, but we get to log in as Bob by the look of it, and it complains about the time, probably because the Cmos battery is gone, or dead. It wants to install something. I think that's, I checked this before and I think that was saying that it's found a Bluetooth device. Yeah, Bluetooth, but there's no drivers for it. Anyway, there's Windows XP. Start of the downfall of Windows, making everything sort of ugly instead of making the computer good to use. Anyway, let's turn these off and we'll take them apart. See what's going on inside them. Except that's not exactly true, because I'm not going to take apart this Apple computer because this was one of the whole bunch that I got that actually worked. There were a couple of others that don't work, and that's what we're going to be taking apart. This is still turning off. So we'll put this good one aside. I'll keep that as a memory of what Apple computers were like. Though I never actually owned an Apple computer before getting these ones. And we'll take apart this old HP computer. This one here, it doesn't boot. Nothing comes up on the screen. And it's seen better days. It's all cracked in various places. And the hinge seems to be messed up because it doesn't line up properly. So this one's had a rough time somewhere at some point. We could try powering it up, perhaps, just for fun. See if it can prove me wrong from when I tested it last. A little light comes on there, yeah, green, and I think it will go red if it is charging, but the battery that's in this one is wrecked. It doesn't charge at all. You can hear something in the DVD drive. For some reason the power button symbol was turned sideways. So it made the Apple noise, but nothing comes up on the screen, so maybe it's just the screen is damaged on that. Don't know. Anyway, let's take it apart. Let's start with the Apple computer, since that's the exciting one that I've not seen inside before. So you get a ruler, turn that, and you can take the battery out. A metal strip around the inside edge with 3 screws in it. So that comes out like that, and that really reveals some little levers, and when you pull on those it pops the RAM out. Those are 512 megabyte modules. I think that's what it originally came with. There's a label here which has the specifications written. Yeah, it says there 2.1 gigahertz, 2 times 512, 120, not sure what that means, combo, which I guess is the DVD. So it's EMC number 2242, which you can use for looking up the details of the computer. The tab there to pull to release the drive. It's got a mechanical drive, 120 gigabytes. That's as far as I've ever taken one of these apart. Let's take a look at what drive this thing has got. So they have a little panel there which you can remove, and there's a tab, but you gotta undo another screw. I think this one is a slightly older one with IDE. Yeah, but there's an adapter in this caddy. So that's a 5,400 RPM, 60 gigabyte. I don't know what RPM this one is. Has it got an Apple branding on it? Must mean it's good. Not sure. Some of them were 77,200 RPM. Some sort of cable there. And another thing you can pull. Maybe that's a modem. Look at that. Maybe that's Bluetooth. Yeah. This little pull tab thing I just noticed. I assume that would be the Bluetooth module, because that's a little wireless thing that doesn't need an additional aerial. The aerial will be on that maybe, or a little line on the PCB. I assume that's what that is. Battery. Undo these clips. Pretty small, really small compared to that Apple one, but this will have cylindrical cells in it. Probably 6 of them, which are a bit more power dense than this, which uses the pouch type, I believe. Pretty sure the cylindrical cells are more dense. Not sure if that still stands, but RAM door. Oh, look at that. And there's the wireless card. So we'll see what sort of RAM this is. 512 megabyte DDR. This is the Apple one. I think they're the same type of memory, although the HP module is slightly bigger. 512, so there might be more memory in this computer on the other side of the keyboard. That's a possibility, because I thought it had 1 gig. But so this thing here is the wireless network card. There's some sort of bug stuck in there as well. So they're the antenna wires. And then that just pops out, similar to the RAM. Little SIM module, so that's quite exciting. I don't think we can see much more on it though, because there's metal cans under it, under the label. Oh, there's some chips there, sort of Intel chip there. Presumably that's some type of PCI bus connector. Haven't really looked into how those things work. Anyway, that's Wi-Fi. That's interesting. I wasn't aware that that existed. There you go. Let's look in this Apple. Some screws are already missing. Don't think there's screws under these feet. That one's been ripped off and it's just blank there. So let's undo these. Already really loose. There are screw holes on the side, but there's no screws in those. Screw holes on the back with no screws. No idea how this is supposed to come apart. But it doesn't appear to have any screws holding it together anymore. Oh, they're long. I wonder if someone's glued it. Some sort of trick to opening these things. Thought this cover would just slide off or lift off once you undid the screws. Maybe that's why it's all cracked around here from someone trying to get the thing open. Maybe we should poke things in there as well. Feels like there's something holding it in there. Maybe there is. I think it might be there's additional screws here that are holding it. Okay. Yeah, I was expecting this white piece to come off, not the top half, the keyboard part to come out. So yeah, to release the keyboard, these screws are on little tabs which are folded upwards. Now we know. Maybe there's more. There's a lot of screws along that edge there. Maybe we should undo those. Why is there so many? 9, 10 screws? There's something very important in here that they don't want falling out. Maybe they undo different things and you're only supposed to undo a couple of them at the moment. Anyway, we're taking them all out. I'm not planning to put this back together. I've got other ones to keep nice, so the damaged ones will be disassembled and recycled. Damaged computers, I mean. Okay, so that's coming off now. That screw there is still holding it on. It's gone on an angle, but it's jammed in there still. It's because of the force of the keyboard pulling. Okay. Now, a lot of dust has fallen out and it's gone onto the screen. Look at that, the keyboard comes off and reveals dust. Lots and lots of dust. And also a short cable which is attached somehow and would be extremely easy to rip off if you weren't aware of it. So that there, that's the sort of 10-pin connector. 5 on each side with a really short cable. I guess they did that on purpose so anyone opening it would wreck it by just ripping it off. Wow, look at that. That's really dirty. Is that an aerial for Bluetooth or something? Little tiny strip of stuff there which looks like it has an aerial cable coming off of it. There's heat pipes coming off 2 chips to heatsink and fan. There's a wireless module there. You see the mechanism that operates these RAM. They're quite tricky to squeeze in. Quite a clever little thing. It's expensive though. Take out the optical drive. That's attached in by screws. The hard disk connector on this side. SATA. I've got a bunch of these HP computers and they're also a mixture of IDE and some SATA for the hard disk. Even though they all seem to have come from around about the same time. It must have been the transition period between IDE and SATA. This seems to also be the transition period between the normal and wide screens. SATA means you could use much thinner cables, needs only a few conductors, although they do have to be rated for high speed. There's some tape there, shielding tape, conductive tape. I wonder if that comes out or there was screws on the other side holding it. It does feel like there's screws on the other side. There's something on the other side that you can't get to easily. Okay, that unplugged. The IE, really fine pitch. Oh, there's speakers in the back, so those weren't vents. That's where the speakers are. Let's take out the wireless module. The Apple computer we powered up, the Wi-Fi on that doesn't seem to work. So maybe I need to open it up and swap it with a different module. Or maybe someone's taken the module out of that one. Is that a mini PCIe? Maybe? Not sure. Could be. Yeah, kind of like the M SATA connectors. Maybe that's mini PCIe. Well, those are the speaker wires there. And this other one, not sure. It'll be something that goes up to the webcam. Oh, under this little pad is a tiny little connector there. Look how small that is. Very delicate. It looks like the power connector on the side It looks like the power connector on the side is separate to the main board because there are some wires there. We have now unplugged. We'll try and get this main board out. Just randomly undo these screws. So I'm not... Is that another speaker there? Could be. That there looks like another speaker. Does that mean it's got a subwoofer separate to the... I wonder if the screen will lift out if we undo these. Not sure where the display data cable is. Oh, I think it's that there. Which I think means we need to get this optical drive out first. It's not very clear how that happens. I think the speakers are glued in, so they're not going to come out easily. Or maybe that's just the vent that I'm seeing that looks like glued. Yeah, it's kind of yellowy in there, which I thought was it that they'd glued the speakers in, but no, it's just the color of the mesh stuff that's over the speaker grill. Look at that little thing. It's going to be pumping. So there's wires going under the edge of the optical drive. There seems to be something holding it in though. Okay, I've had a look at it. There's a bracket off here with a screw that's covered in the cables, or covered by the cables. So we should be able to take that off. There's the tip of this other screw from the bottom which didn't come out. So let's unplug these. Oh, so that's audio over to the sockets on the side. That must be the other speaker wires. That will be the display cable there. Oh, maybe I could just zoom in. And a little handle there. Does that come off when you pull on it? Yep. So what was in that one? Oh, that was the CD-ROM's data cable with the other little thingy that goes there. Okay, so that's the display cable. Now that those are out of the way, well, maybe, can we see a small screw under here holding the optical drive in? I think we got it. There we go. So we liberated the optical drive. Except it's still held on by whatever that is. Ah, yeah, I think that is Bluetooth. Yeah, there's a little module there with a little aerial plug. So that's probably USB there. It looks a bit like USB colors. Little aerial cable there. Okay, so we unplug that aerial. Now we can get the optical out. So this space, because of the shape of the optical drive, so it needs this wing out the side for the disc to spin in, it means there's space under it, which is where all this stuff here was hiding. So that's Bluetooth. No, it's not through Cmos Battery. So that's another speaker by the look of it, with like a bass port type deal. A lot of crust built up in that. Pretty sure that's a speaker. Feels like it is. Pretty gross. Maybe we should have vacuumed this off before. Ugh, the fan is full of hair. Wow, look at that. It's like heaps of hair wrapped around the computer. So it must have been used for someone that had long hair that was falling out. Wow. So it looks like the air gets sucked into here. There's vents. Comes around and then it gets pulled in by the fan here and pushed out. And equally some room here for the air to come in. Yeah, but unlike the HP computer, the fan is visible on the bottom, so it's sucking air on the bottom. So if you put it in on your bed, it's going to be vacuuming up all your skin crust. Whereas these Apple computers, they suck in from not the bottom, so they're better to have in your bed if that's what you want to do. I'm not sure which one's easier to clean. Got to take them both significantly apart before you can actually get to any of the parts that would need cleaning. Okay, let's take the screen off. Presumably that will come, that will let it out. Suppose that comes off normally to let the screen out. I think that's just a bracket holding thing there. I think it's just, yeah, a hinge cover thing. So that little tiny connector. Oh, that lifts up. Okay. There's more stuff down here tangled up together. So we've got two aerial connectors. This 4-pin connector, which is probably USB for the webcam. Probably. Then on the other side we got the data connector, which probably includes power for the backlight. And then there's this other one which looks like a shielded cable. That was the one that was going over to the microphone earphone ports. So that would be the microphone signal coming from microphones up next to the camera there. Do these separate? See, there's a grounding point for the shield on this cable. It was under the screw that was holding the optical drive in. So they're all wrapped around the battery wire. So those wires there unplugged. So that's battery, the little 2-pin one, and then the little 4-pin one, which will be the USB for the Bluetooth module. Oh yeah, and those speakers shared that cable. That cable harness 4-pin plug. Not sure how that Bluetooth thing is attached. Oh, you can't even see. Here you go. Is there a screw? Does not appear to be a screw. Okay, so the screen's off. We'll take that apart too a bit later. Just need to clear this junk out of the way. Oh, screws are now stuck into the magnetic power connector. That's very dodgy. Little things can get stuck in there and then you'll short it out when you plug the power supply in. Good design. See, wires comes out, so it looks like an aluminium frame, but it might be fused in because it looks here there are like heat staked parts. So that's the spring that makes the hard disk very difficult to put in when it's not mounted with these special shaped screws that guide the drive in these slots. Without that, and if you're using a slightly thinner drive like an SSD, it's really difficult to get the drive in because this spring pushes it away from the connector. So I ended up just putting a RAM module on top of the SSD and then sliding it in, and that was able to push against the spring and hold the drive in the right position because the SSD was thinner and I didn't have any more of those screws available at the time. Some bits will come out by the look of it. That appears to be related to the fan bracket. Maybe that's magnesium alloy. Very lightweight fan might come out. Let's see, there's a connector there. Wow, look at that. This whole sheet of dust was stuck across the heatsink grills. Wow. That's amazing, isn't it? Skin flakes and the like. So that would have made the cooling not so effective. And you can see all the hair that started coming out of this when I started pulling on it. Yummy. Let's take off the rest of the heat pipe. So you can see the actual heatsink is very tiny and very filled with crust. I think we can undo just these 4. Well, that one wasn't even done up. Or maybe I had got to that before. So that looks like it might be a thermistor type thing on the heatsink. Probably for it to measure the temperature. A little pad over it. Real dusty. Yeah, so that just cracked off. So I think the thermal compound is very dried out. More dust. The size of the heatsink. Look how tiny that is. Fine thins. And that looks like a little thermistor thing there for measuring the temperature. And then copper areas for the chips to contact, and then a heat pipe which has got some sort of a wick and alcohol type stuff in there that boils and then condenses over there, something like that, to transfer the heat. See, I think this is nearly freed. This is a whole shielding assembly of the speaker we already looked at, the bracket thing under there. So this is all shielding stuff for the ports. So it probably passes quite strict interference regulations, like radiation, RFI, the battery connector. It's got some stuff there. Battery connector has got some little board thing attached to it. Wow, look at that. Like a pin header thing with 2 layers of circuit board on it. What's that all about? It says Apple on it. Is that another temperature thing? Bit of a bodge. Yeah, interesting they used a pin header there to connect the battery. Some kind of press fit into the board. Presumably there's a connector on the other side that those pins poke into. They look long enough to do that. Looks like one of them got corrosion on it. Okay, that's the... So the hard disk connector's got larger contacts there for power, and then the fine ones for the SATA data. Data. So what else needs to come out to get this board out? That screw's already done. Is there anything under that? Could be. So that's like a insulation shield thing under the where the Wi-Fi card is. A lot of little components under there. No more screws though. Oh, there's a screw there. Oh, what's the deal? No focus. Okay, there's a screw there. So that's the magnetic power connector. Look how crusty it is. I wonder how much of that's metal filings. Wow, so dirty. And this little board with some stuff on it. Some kind of component there. That might be an inductor. Common mode choke type deal there. Oh, looks like there's windings. Little glint of wires in there. Interesting. At least that's a replaceable part, so when it gets destroyed, you can swap it out, replace it. Still not sure what's holding this thing in. Tape there. Okay, so there's a shielding base. There's no screws accessible from the side. Oh, that's come off now. A shielding thing. Maybe there's screws in between. No. Under this tape. Oh. Oh, that's pulled off the lid of the Ethernet magnetics. Look at that. You can see the little isolating transformers and impedance matching transformers for the Ethernet connector. So it's 2 of each, so it's only running 2 pairs for 100 megabits, perhaps. The lid of that transformer there is stuck onto this tape. Oh, and the part numbers stayed on the tape, so that will make it difficult to work out what it is. What's a TDK 6 something or other? Little Ethernet magnetics. Oh well, we've wrecked that. But still no more screws showing up. What is holding this in? Ah, look at that. Under the dust. Under the dust there. There's another screw hiding. Okay, here we go. Wow. Okay, so on the bottom of the board, which is nice and clean, nice blue board, got Intel chip. That must be some kind of, is that Southbridge? I think this must be a CPU and a Northbridge type chip. Not sure which is which. That looks more CPU like because of those labels on it. Yeah. 2.1 gigahertz, 3 megabytes cache. So that one there will be Northbridge, whatever they call that on this generation computers. And that will be a Southbridge there. More tape covering up things. Oh, okay, so it's gigabit. They've just split the magnetics over too, so we've ripped the lid off of another magnetics. It's cunning, isn't it? Instead of using one large transformer, split it into 2, and halfway through the board Ethernet socket, so you can get the low profile mini DVI thing. Firewire, which is sort of in the board, it's flush into the board, and the USBs are just sitting on the board. Yes, and there's the connector that the battery pins poke into. This thingy, can we see it? Are we allowed to see it? Here we go. So that pokes in there, yeah, they come through just. That's interesting. More tape over here, I don't know what that's covering. I think it's just insulating some of those fits from the hinge mechanism. So that's all the power supply stuff there. There'll be a power supply controller, probably that. Is that a power supply controller? Marvell chip will be for the Ethernet since that's right by it. What's that one? Is that a silicon image? So that might be a line driver for the DVI. And that there's the power supply chip. Power supply controller got what looks like polymer type or high performance capacitors there and there. And then on this side we've got the FETs and the inductors to make that all work. and it'll be soft switched, so we're using some of these FETs for the diodes. Make a buck converter, more power supply business here for the other chips. More power supply business here, those will be little FETs, which probably is for powering the drives and the display. More power supply stuff under there. A Realtek chip, I wonder if that's the sound. Expecting to see a TI chip for the Firewire. Some sort of current sense resistor there. That 27 ohm, thought it would be 27 milliohm. Shunt, assume that would what it would be for measuring the current of something. Possibly battery charging. There's a pretty big inductor there. I wonder if that's to do with battery charger. Well, it's got some tiny little shunts there, controlling the current or monitoring the current. Oh yeah, it could be. So the battery comes in here. There's a shunt, and then there's a massive inductor there. So there's probably battery charger business going on somewhere in line with those things. Interesting. Small little board, really, within the shape of that whole computer. Battery for the Cmos. Now this Bluetooth thing, I wanted to get that off without wrecking it, but it might be just taped down, I don't know. Oh, I think it's part of the frame. I think it's mounted on the frame, the kind of aluminium-y magnesium. Oh no, no, it was just taped down. So that's, I believe, a little Bluetooth module. Oh, it doesn't want to focus on that, does it? There's a connector there. Oh no, we're ripping off the label that actually tells us what it is. Oh wow, that label's going to go away when we peel that off, unfortunately. And it's all covered under a shield, so we can't really see much of what this thing actually is. But it looks pretty simple. It's just power, ground, and USB data there. And there's a 3.3 volt test point there, so it's probably 3.3 volts into it, not 5 volts, which is common in some of this built-in laptop stuff, so you can't just join it up to a USB plug and use it, because it uses 3.3 volts. But you could put a regulator in and then use it. I wonder if it's possible to get this frame out so it can be recycled better. Just prying at this stuff here. It's coming out. Not very willingly, but it's coming out. Maybe there are more screws to undo. Ah, yes, there. Ah, look at that, there is stuff there. You must have just ripped it out then. So the hard disk connector, hard drive connector, this thing. So the hard disk connector, that has a tiny little connector off the side of it. Look at that. A little tiny thing there. And then in the corner here, there's a ribbon cable which goes to what I think is an infrared something or other, and the little white light that comes on sometimes. So we were just prying in that area there, probably wrecking it. With 2 more screws there. Seems to be taped together. Something's going on there. That's coming out. Ah, so that's a kind of fluffy thing for the disc to go through. Interesting. What's on the end? So it's just a slot. So there's the aerial. Oh, it's Tyco brand, and we just ripped it off its little holder. I think it's glued onto the top of the CD drive. There you go, that's come off. And so that's Bluetooth, we believe. Very thick board with a special track on it to make Bluetooth aerial. So we should put that with the Bluetooth thing to keep it safe. Little tiny plug. Okay, this is a lot messier than I thought it was going to be, but I've pried this middle part out of the base. It seems to be double-sided taped in, and we can see now the little thing that was in the corner is an LED, a white LED, and this infrared thing, which I think comes out from the back. Yeah, there's a little board that's probably glued in there, which that connects onto. Very delicate stuff. Get it out. There you go. And some kind of tape stuff got stuck. All covered in hair and dust, but yeah, there's the front pieces. So I'm going to clean up this mess, and then we'll have a look in the HP computer, and at the end we'll take their screens apart. What a mess that made. Let's carry on. It looks like the keyboard vents, there are these cutouts around about where the main board was, below it. So the air from the fan probably also comes through the keyboard, through here. We should take the top off this optical just to check that out. It'll be full of dust too. Oh, there's a rail thing on the side here, which went to that little bracket thing that we had so much trouble finding. Maybe there's something under this. Yeah, that's just taped on. Don't know what else is holding it. Oh, it might be clipped in a weird way. Oh, there's a screw under this thing here. Okay, there's a trick. Okay. So when you push a disc in, that gets pushed back to the side because of the shape of the disc. Push that, then that will get pushed by the disc. That's it, I guess. Oh, then finally that, which must push a switch that then makes a motor lift this stuff up. Oh yeah, must be that. There's a track there. A track there that can slide and actuate this stuff. Oh yeah, and that there. Wonder what, oh yes, it looks like it's driven from in here. There's a motor. So under there will be a little worm drive thing which transfers to motion, which pulls this slide up and down. And there's another little thing in the front there, must lift up to stop you from putting a disc in when there is already one in there. There you go. Slot load drive. Not looked in one of these before. Wonder if this is simpler than the other ones that are drawer loading, tray loading. I don't think so. I think the tray mechanism is probably more forgiving. Okay, so there's a ribbon cable coming off that, which is stuck under there, but we can see now this sliding mechanism. There we go, and that lifts up the laser, whatever it is, that the spindle assembly gets lifted up. I don't know if you can see that from looking straight down, but yeah, that stuff slides along and lifts it up. Very good. That's, oh yeah, that cable's ripped off. Little gearbox there. So that's the slot load drive. This computer, however, has a drawer loading type. Thought there was an easy way of getting these out. Maybe not in this computer, but a lot of them. So there's the, I think that's the connector for it. There's screws for releasing the keyboard. Let's try and find a screwdriver that fits. That will do. Let's undo everything. It should allow us to get into the keyboard. Screws are a lot bigger in this computer. There we go. So this one's drawer type DVD. Let's take it apart. All the metal parts will be going into the metal recycling. Does this open easily? Undo the screws on the back. And there's tape to make sure it's extra difficult to get into. Don't want anyone breaking into your CD drives now, do you? So it's, yeah, got a drawer. What we need is something we can poke into the emergency eject hole. I wonder if the Apple computer has one of those. So you poke something long and thin down in this hole and it will pop the drawer open so you can get the disk out while the computer's off. Looking for a bit of stiff wire that we can poke in. I don't know if I've got something stiff enough. I also don't know how long it needs to be. Okay. Okay, it didn't have to go in far at all. Alright, so there you go, all the mechanisms in the sliding part. There's a board in the back there. Well, it's got some limit switches on it so it knows when it's fully in and it's not quite ejected yet, but released. So it's got a ribbon cable with a connector there. Wow, look at that massive chip on the bottom. Must be a fully integrated DVD drive chip. Look at that, the size of that compared to the board. It's another thing there with a thermal pad. Don't know what that is, the writing's hard to read on it. And that looks like some kind of memory chip, maybe it's a ROM. So all the mechanical business is happening on the tray. There's a worm. That must be the laser movement, perhaps? Is that right? No, something else. Oh no, that's just a spring. Okay, so there's a spring rod there, which will be what makes it eject. Yeah, all the worm business is over here. And I don't think it's a worm, it's obviously some gears maybe. Oh no, it is a worm. It's just a very coarse one down in there. So that runs, the lens assembly runs in. And that probably all lifts out now that we've taken the screws off. It's got some shock mounts there. Another ribbon cable. Unplug that, which goes to the eject button and probably the LED on the front. Yeah, there's not much going on in here. Got a cover, which is also clipped on with little clippies. There you go, there's a slide spiral thingy. The motor is embedded into the circuit board, so the coils and everything will just be soldered onto the board, I think. I wonder if that comes off. Another connector there for that motor which drives it up and down. And so it looks like a steel backed PCB, but I think it just might be glued onto it. Spindle motor's retained onto it. It's being crimped in. A little IR type sensor. So that must be detecting the homing of the lens assembly perhaps. Is that true? How did that go? Like that? Like that. Yes, so the reflection of the tin there is picked up by a little IR, LED and light sensor. So once it's home, it detects it. There you go, and it's a plastic thing there that gets pressed into the side of that worm. And the other side, rod's falling out. Anyway, that's a CD drive. Pretty interesting. There'll be a way of releasing that. Some sort of clip. One there. Great! CD drives. Full of wonder and magical things. Let's take this apart. I think we've released enough to get the keyboard off, but let's take the rest of the screws out of the bottom first while we're here. Again, I don't know if the bottom or the top comes off first in this one. Not taken apart this type of computer before. Wow, I've done a Dell one a long time ago. That was my computer that ended up breaking down, which I think was the BGA soldering issue. Some screws on the back, which I assume will be part of the hinges for the display. Okay, all the screws are loose, all gone. Yeah, what I did notice, on the Apple computer, there's a magnet in the corner there, so that must mean there's a hall sensor. No, to detect when the lid's shut. No, that would just be to hold it shut when the computer's shut. Okay, I thought it was... Sometimes there's also hall sensors so it can detect when you shut the lid to turn the backlight off. Let's see what's happened. Oh, this has infrared. I missed that. Oh, we were looking at a different computer, weren't we? There's SD card on the front, speakers, a couple of USBs, VGA, modem, Ethernet, Firewire. This one's got 2 PC card. Yep, no express card. Parallel, broken power, PS2, keyboard and mouse, 2 more USBs, speakers, and serial port. This is a quite well equipped computer. More well equipped than the Apple ones. So, and these, you undo little clippy things here between the keys, and that allows you to lift that up. Bit better than the Apple one there because you're not struggling to unplug a cable that you can't actually get your hands under there. This one, you can flip back and access the connector. The Apple one is just one thin cable though. So there must be some chips somewhere in this assembly to do the keyboard scanning and encoding. Maybe it's part of the touchpad assembly. Ah, look at that. Keyboard controller doofy is in there, and probably touchpad doofy. Whereas that's just a keyboard, no other thing. So it's just the rows and columns coming out there. So here we have more RAM. The original RAM was this one, Simple Tech it says in there, whereas this one's a Hynix. And that is 512. And this is 512, so it's 1 gig total. Okay, that will be the modem. You can tell because it's all isolated in its own insulation material. And that will have a wire going all the way over to the phone jack there, so it's all isolated to comply with the standards. But it also has a wire going onto the main board in parallel with it, which is interesting. Wonder what that does. Maybe it's a ringing indicator input so that it can wake up the computer if someone's ringing your phone. Let's see, it looks like it comes apart here. Unless that's just cracked? I don't know. Did undo the screws, all the screws there for the hinges. I think that these covers come off. I wonder what's holding that stuff in. I think it's just clipped in. Okay, well it's unclipped now. So that's a row of shortcut media type buttons. It has its own little cable assembly. Whereas the power button, it's got a long post and it goes down into there. Look at that. CPU. And that must be a Northbridge type deal. So that's all sealed. There's plastic over the whole bottom of the keyboard. I wonder if they make this a drainable keyboard like the Lenovo ones. So Lenovo computers, you can spill liquid onto the computers, the business ones at least, and they won't get damaged because they have drains built into the keyboard, so it won't flow through into the motherboard. Maybe these ones do the same thing. On the Lenovo computers, or the old good ones, business ones, there were slots in the bottom with a little drip marked next to them, which is where water or liquid would come out if you spilled it onto the keyboard, and it was completely separated from the system board, so you wouldn't wreck the computer by spilling your drink on it. Same can't be said about this Apple one, unfortunately. If you spill a drink on that, it's going to go straight through there onto the system board and wreck it. It's interesting, they protect you from tripping over the cord, but they don't protect you from spilling your drink on it. So we already took out the Wi-Fi card. I think we have to take out off the screen before we can go much further. So the aerial wires come out. The display cable here, that just unplugs like that, pretty easy. And there's a couple more screws on the hinges, will be the final ones. it should lift out. Yep. Oh, yep, so there are two on the back and the one from the top holding them on. Very good. We'll put that with the Apple screen so we can dismantle those together. Now we see if we can get the rest of this thing off. There are more screws. No. I think it's just clipped together. Cmos battery there. Okay. Little warning label thing about it. I don't know what that says. It says danger of explosion if battery is incorrectly replaced. Okay, that's good. And that's attached itself together like it's being glued. It's just clips. Ah, the touchpad thing that unconnected itself. So that has some screws here with a little metal frame. So there's all shielding here, conductive sticky fabric. So that electrically connects everything together for grounding and shielding, stop interference coming out. And there's a frame around here which would be some very light aluminum type magnesium alloy thing. More little screws, look at that, and then there's Phillips. So these are all Torx something or others. What's that, T8? But then there's Phillips every now and then. Well, probably JIS. There always seem to be JIS stuff in here. And electronics. That's 0, JIS 0. It's a little bit loose though. Maybe JIS 1. Yeah, that's better. I'll take these off so they can be put in the recycling. It's very lightweight metallic parts. Feels very interesting. Yeah, so it bends and then till it snaps. So yeah, some sort of aluminium alloy stuff. Ah, okay, so this thing, the touchpad thing, you have to slide that up and then it releases from plastic clips there. Oh, that conductive tape everywhere. Goes up to the screw hole, so it must be contacting something. It'll be all these grounded holes on the main board. You've got little shield rings around them so that the grounding part doesn't touch some of the components that are nearby the holes. That's interesting. I wonder if they messed up their clearances around the holes, so they had to do that. So that's the serial port D9 connector. That thing I think is Bluetooth on the bottom. It's got quite a lot of pins though, so I might... it's probably because it's got the hardware disable and maybe an LED as well as USB ports over here on another board. It's a bit of a sloppy design, isn't it, having remotely mounted ports, having to deal this stuff with extra cable assemblies. Oh, that's the card reader there. There's a bunch of Torx screws around it. A little subframe thing. Oh, maybe that's speakers. Yeah, that's what that is. So it's the speaker assembly. So its own little resonant cavity thing. Yeah, so that's the speakers. Look how crusty that is. Someone spilled something in there, that's what's going on. Okay, so that's speaker enclosure. There's only one wire, one connector of 4, so it must pass it through to the other chamber. Anyway, so that's now exposed. This thing, which is on its own little ribbon cable, sits above the main board, which is the card reader. So I wonder if the card reader chip is on here. I don't think so. It must be somewhere else. It's a Broadcom chip. So it's probably doing the Ethernet. Those look like the magnetics for Ethernet. But there's no Ethernet here. That's got USB and sound. It looks like that's USB. Probably comes off this Southbridge type deal. So that must be sound. It probably brings all the sound up to here to go through to be disconnected by the switches and the sockets and then back down. What a hassle that is to route it. Instead of just having the connectors on the board. This has got quite a big main board in it compared to that other computer, the Apple computer. The fan. Similar sort of thing to the Apple. Maybe a slightly bigger heatsink. It's still pretty puny though. And so this CPU is in a socket, which is interesting. Let's take the heatsink off of it. So comparing the Apple one, which is now a bit cleaner, to this HP one. HP one's probably about twice the volume because it's thicker and wider. But it's not black, and black will slightly increase its ability to radiate the heat. So yeah, I'm not sure how significant that would be. Well, this was only doing one chip though, and it's bigger, which is interesting. This thing here gets its own heatsink. Yeah, we were doing the touchpad, weren't we? And we got just sidetracked by the card reader and the speakers. So there you go. Now what I was interested in is this on the Apple board the same chip that's on this one? Nope. Quite different. I suppose they are different series of CPUs and the like, so not surprising they're different. Let's take out the CPU, have a look at it. CPU. In a socket, so you could replace it if you felt like it. Interesting. This is interesting, this modem, how it's got another connection back to the board. I don't know what the deal is with that. What's stopping this coming out? I think we have to undo the thumb screws around the Ethernet because they're stuck down to the frame perhaps. I think that's what's going on there. Got a nut tray there. It's not the right size though. Only on an angle it works. Okay, so it should be freed, so we probably have to do the same thing for the RS-232 port, but can't reach in there because it's fully shrouded by the plastic housing. So this computer is not quite as dusty as the Apple one was. We have to do the same on the VGA plug, it looks like it. We'll just munt it out with these pliers. Since it's so shrouded, it's very hard to get in there. Okay, so that should free the main board, yes. Ooh, and all the juicy stuff under there where it's been spilt. So the last thing that's not freed is this serial port connector. My poor pliers are getting a bit wasted from doing this. Okay, so that's the serial port out now. That's just a connector with another connector on the inside. Oh, and there's a little bit of possibly protection or series resistance in there. There's an HP computer frame. Now let's look at this main board. So on these, you can undo the PC card connectors normally undo. Just disconnect themselves so that you can replace them if necessary. So there's 4 screws. Let's peel this stuff off as well. Look at that, it's the bottom of the CPU. Yeah, where it's visible through panels, they put this film over it so that you don't see the main board. You can't wreck it. And the Lenovo, they put them on the tops, this stuff on the top side as well, so that if anything does get through, if you spill it, it's not going to damage any of the circuits. It's like they thought of that. Like it was designed to withstand spillings. So this here PC card slot will unplug. It's got a little edge connector there that goes into this connector. So it's a TI thing there. I think it's that Ultra Media chip does the PC card, and it probably does the SD card stuff as well, because those are often shared. That Broadcom's probably the Ethernet. Some quite hard out inductor there using like flat bar type copper for the windings. Maybe that's the main core voltage for the CPU. There's a bunch of VETs on the bottom there, fancy ones. Don't know what the controller would be for it. Oh, it must be that thing. That's probably the controller chip for that power supply. There's that, which will be the ROM holding the BIOS. A few other bits and pieces there. More power supply stuff. So that's the main battery connector, I think. Yes, and then the expansion battery connector there. And some of the other computers of this era also had another battery connector in the CD-ROM bay. So you could put an additional battery in the CD drive. I think that might have been a Dell thing as well. Lots of options for powering the computer. These days you don't have to worry about that because you use your USB-C battery bank to charge up your computer while you're away from power. Interesting the size difference between the Apple one and the HP one, with more or less the same amount of stuff on it. Although all this area is taken up by the card readers and PC card, so yeah, you could subtract that. And Apple doesn't have any serial ports or parallel ports, so I'm not sure how much of that area is involved in those, maybe a bit. So there's the docking connector, which Apple also doesn't have. Probably involves a bit of circuitry. There'll be switch chips so that it can switch the Ethernet signals between the dock and the main, or the onboard connector. Onboard connector is over here, so the signals must go somewhere in internal layers. That there is probably the Ethernet signal switch, and it will switch between those two magnetics, one going to the onboard port and one traveling off to the dock connector. So there must be some quite advanced internal layers in this board to route all that stuff around. See, there's a bunch of tracks coming around here going to various things. I put my fingers in the juicy stuff there, that's good. Okay, so that's main boards. Chuck those to the side. And we were looking at this thing, the touchpad. So now that little metal cover came off, that can just slide out and the buttons come off. So it's got a scrolling area. So this is a PCB which has some kind of coating over it and a little controller chip, and it's got some sort of grid on it. You can see the tracks going off to the bottom, and then this side coming out of the chip. Just unplug the buttons cable. I don't know if we can get that label off to see better. Probably doesn't matter. I was wondering can we peel off this grey stuff to see the bottom of the board. That's probably where the interesting stuff is, because it'll have some sort of grid on there that it uses. Put some kind of RF into it, and then depending on where your finger is, it will change the response. Yeah, look at that. I'd say that's some kind of special RF thing, like waveguides. It looks like these black lines, which will be coming off of those tracks there. It's another layer that's been printed over, so it's making a grid. So these tracks connect onto there, those wires, but then it looks like they don't go anywhere. Maybe there's an internal layer which has got grids in that direction, but then there seems to be this guard track around the whole edge of it, and then it's got this zigzag tracks coming off of that. All magical stuff. Not really sure what's going on there, but I imagine it's some kind of scanned grid, and then when your finger is near it, it affects an oscillator frequency, and it can use that to determine that you're touching somewhere. That's what I think is happening. And of course the sticky stayed on that. It didn't come off on the label. The label was... That's the usual way, isn't it? Alright, I'll tidy up this mess. Let's take apart the screens. So the PC HP it's got a anti-glare screen. Apple is a reflective screen, which is not very useful if there's light in the room, because you end up just seeing yourself and having trouble seeing what you're trying to work on. Now I'm pretty sure there'll be screws under these little pad things. Yep, to stop it banging when the lid shuts, but also conceal the screws. The Apple one, no idea, because it doesn't have pad things like this. There'll still be a lot of clips on this. Do these bottom ones have it? Yep. Pretty sure these side things won't. They look too narrow. Sticky stuff on the screws. Get rid of that stuff. Now what? Oh, there's more down in the corners. Yep. Oh, that one's loose. Maybe that's why the hinge is loose. Possibly. Over years of opening and closing, if we tighten that. Oh, it's still a little bit loose. I think the hinges are worn out. Oh, the Apple ones only have a very small bit. There'll be a massive leverage on that. But they did have another bracket that's screwed over those. These ones have a post on them. Ah, look at that. There is more on the sides. So we need to find a way of getting that off. Need some kind of pokey thing. Unless the... Oh here, look at that. We can just push through them into the screw head and undo the screw. I wonder if these parts form part of the hinge to help some of the leverage get distributed through the frame. Because you've got this delicate glass thing, and then you've got people pulling on it to open and shut the lid. Seems like a recipe for disaster. These things are normally clipped. Yeah, it's just about putting it back together. Don't have to be all that careful. Okay, there's some screws inside now. And yeah, it does look like the hinge, this metal part that screws onto the hinge goes the whole way up to add some rigidity. Okay, and maybe it will come out now. So the aerials for Wi-Fi are there and there. The aerial wire, so that was just laid in the back. There must be a bit of space in there behind the screen then. So here we have Wi-Fi antenna or aerial to the screen of this thin coax is connected to this side, and the center conductor is connected to this part here, which is a very special shape to do Wi-Fi stuff. And then the corner of that is connected to this top part of the frame. Not sure. Oh no, it's not connected, it's just sitting right by it. Or is it? I'm not sure there. What's attaching that? Oh, it's tape. There you go, it's taped down. So that was retaining this clip part that latches the lid shut so it doesn't open when you don't want it open. There you go, that's the aerials. That's the back side of the lid. Now we've got display panel, LCD, and there's screws, oh they're quite loose, holding the hinges to the panel. It does look like the hinge is attached to that part. Yeah, it's being pressed over. Pick off the other one. The other hinge part. So the cable that goes up, a little bit comes off here to backlight driver. Looks like it's fluorescent backlight. And then the rest of it goes up here to this connector where it joins onto the LCD panel. Oh, and there's some tape over there to stop it coming off. So that will unplug. There'll be some LVDS type signal there. Oh, now it's glued down to the paper. Oh, there's sticky stuff along the front. So backlight unplugs, that's a high voltage connector there. So that's the backlight cold cathode fluorescent tube driver. It'd be a little switch mode oscillator thingy. And some FETs, and then a transformer with primary, and then a big long secondary that steps up the voltage very high. And using the PCB copper to heatsink it, see there's lots of wires there through, so it can couple heat through to the other side in this sleeve to insulate it, keep the heat in. There's this foil. Let's just rip that off. Being folded over and then stuck down on the edges. And now we can see what the part number is of this panel. LG Philips. This big piece of foil. So at the top here, where the signal connects on, there's a driver board. This is a really thin PCB. A thing to peel off. So this here will take the LVDS data and then split that up into row and column drivers. I'm not quite sure where the other column is, so that there are IC dies on the flex here which drive the columns, and somewhere else will be the row drivers which will connect onto the side of the screen. Or maybe the backlight is in the bottom. It's hard to tell with those wires just going to there. Tape holding these wires. Gone. Yeah, it might be in the bottom. Could be behind there. And there's stuff going on down the side too. Let's peel that up. Yes, so we can see down there, that's the row drivers are on that edge. They might be on both sides. Maybe? Maybe not. There's nothing there we can open up. So somehow the signal gets around to the side. Oh, was it on the thing that was ripped off? Not sure about that. There must be a piece of flex coming around. Flexible board. No, I think we can open this up. Because there's little clippy things. Little clip things there we can undo, but it's still a row of tape along here holding it. I had to get that peeled off as well. And there's foil tape. Screening. We haven't even touched the Apple one yet. This is too exciting. Okay, I think we can get this frame apart now. There we go. Get all these clips undone. And they hold on real good. Okay, now we'll go on this side. Oh, look at that. Oh no, we cracked the corner of the screen. Oh, it's wrecked now. You can see the mess inside there. Why is that? What's holding it on? It didn't release itself from... Oh, there's more tape that we didn't take off. This must be why. There you go. So that was holding it in position. There's another screw here. That will release the backlight part now. Yep, there we go. There's a really thin... More tape. There's a really thin fluorescent tube in there. There's the wire that goes to the other side. Look at that. Cold cathode fluorescent tube. It's got a little ring on it there as a spacer to stop it rattling around too much. Okay, so that's neat. So that was in this white colored channel to help reflect the light into the edge of the screen, edge of the panel, in there through a diffuser. So there's this diffuser part, the white backing, then there's this Perspex sheet diffuser, which couples the light down, and then there's these special lens things which take the light coming downwards and reflect it out evenly all the way along. And then there's a bit more of that, diffusers, another lens, and then the actual glass panel, which we've now broken. Liquid crystal is starting to leach out. So we can see there's just little boards on the edge there. I'm not sure where the signal gets to them. They don't seem to connect onto anything else, which is quite bizarre. Oh, if you look really carefully, there are tracks. Must be all serial data. A few tracks that go around and will connect onto here. So it's all done with conductive strips printed onto the glass. Oh, that's quite amazing. Previous screens that I've taken apart, it's been another flex board that comes off and connects down the side. So there's a power supply here, inductor, diodes and the capacitors and things, so that makes various voltages to drive the LCD. These are designed in 2005, broken in 2021. So there's polarizers stuck onto the glass, which bend the light in certain directions to make it work. So that's why it's not falling apart, except for this corner here, because there's a polarizer stuck onto the surface, and that's holding it together. There's also one on the back. So that's the polarizing filter, and the glass part is several layers of glass because it's got the liquid crystal stuff between it stuck in there. So you can see there that the back part is thicker than, or wider than the one that's on top at the moment, and then there's another polarizer on that. And so that's the front. So the front's on a thinner piece of glass, or a slightly smaller piece of glass. Anyway, we've sufficiently wrecked that. So the problem you can have when you get lines down your screen the whole way, straight lines, is because one of these connections along here is damaged or come loose, so it can't drive that line on the screen. So it's just a conductive strip fused onto the flexible board. Yeah, it's quite interesting. There's a whole like line driver die thing on there, and then those are just fused onto gold tracks on the PCB. All very delicate stuff. So that's a component. Very interesting. Very thin, flexible board that to make the screen nice and thin. Keep it nice and thin. Interesting sheets of stuff there. That's a diffuser. This one's a special lens thing. And then that is a piece of perspex that starts off thick at the end, that the plexiglass acrylic sheet, thick at the end where the little fluorescent tube is, and then gradually gets thinner, and it's got dots on the back, so I think it's those that reflect the light forward into the diffuser thingies. Very good. So that's the inside an LCD panel. Lots of interesting bits and pieces and glass. Okay, let's see if we can get into the Apple one and see if that's any different. No idea how to open this because it doesn't have any obvious screws, but this part here, it looks like that's different. Well, it seems to be just clipped in. Look at that, little clips that go into rectangular holes there. That's cunning. There's probably some procedure you can go through to get that off without damaging it. Yeah, some screws. this hinge cover part. Maybe the backlight driver's in there. I don't know if this is LED or tube backlight. There's a lot of screws around here. A lot of them are loose. Ah, look at that. There's the magnets. Oh, there's more magnets. At the side, but not that side. Maybe that's the one that can be sensed for when the lid's shut. When I was using the Apple computer, I noticed the screen is very soft surface. It's very easy to press it. Like, it's not really made of glass like the other one was. Presses, maybe it's just very, very thin glass. Surprising how easy it is to cause distortion on the screen by touching it. So there's a little camera module there. I think there's an LED on one side and a microphone on the other side. Looks like a microphone there on that side. Okay, so this bottom edge, zoom in a bit, lifts off. Ah yes. So that's just a cover for the backlight driver. It's strained by screws. Oh, because it's so black, it's making it overexpose a bit. I think that's grounding screws, which is strain relief. So a similar sort of deal here. Fluorescent tube driver, same sort of transformer, FETs, control IC. So that's what the 4 black wires were going to. So that's different to the HP one that had the backlight stuff in the data cable. So that must mean that the USB for the camera is in the data cable on this screen. Oh, loose screws. There's another cover down the bottom here. If we can put that there, it will lighten it all up, darken it up. So there's another piece down here that's really attached. Why? Oh, there's clips on that. Okay, it was. Freed up the Wi-Fi aerial cables. And this wire side, it's got one of the wires wrapped around the hinge and the other one not. And again, there's this clip down cover part. And loose screws. Okay, how's that separate? There we go. So that must be going up to the top. It's just a, well, it's a 2-core shielded cable. Let's see if we can get the panel out now. Do we have to undo something else? Maybe it's just a tight fit in here. Something's, oh, there's still a screw there, haven't undone. There's the hinges. So this, the way the Apple logo lights up, it just sees the back of the panel. So a bit of light spills through because it's just a white, opaque but translucent cover on the back. So any computer could have a cutout there and it would show it would light up. And so we can see there is some cable that splits off of the main data cable there up to the webcam part. So this is a Samsung panel of that part number, also made in China. Interesting. Since LG, Philips and Samsung are both Korean companies, so they manufacture in China. Again, similar connector there, LVDS stuff. The newer laptops, they use EDP, embedded DisplayPort, for the screens. So you can wire them onto regular DisplayPorts if you're careful how you do it, and use them just plugged into any old computer that's got a DisplayPort. But these older ones with LVDS, you need a converter of some sort to connect them onto one of the standard signal sources from computers. You can get little modules these days that do that. Okay, so we've got that camera part at the top. Let's have a look at that. We've got a magnet. One of the magnets has fallen out. It's attaching itself to the screwdriver through the handle. Okay, so this microphone looking cable comes up around the side, over the top. Ah, so it's not even part of this camera board. It's a separate thing, and the camera board is also doesn't come out the back side. You have to unplug it with this multi-pin plug. Then the camera module can slide out the front, and it brings the microphone with it. And then that little thing is a bracket screwed onto the top. got some locating pins, holes which go into pins as well. There are aerials. The Wi-Fi aerial is there. There's another aerial there on the side. So that means both aerials are on one side in this computer, not at opposite sides like the other. So it's come off and it brings both aerials with it. One on the side there and one that was on the top. So with these widescreens, they can say, oh, it's 13-inch or 14-inch, but you get a way less screen area than you do with the 4:3 type screens, because they've squashed it down so much that you still can get a long diagonal measurement, but with a lot less pixels. So it's a marketing scam. It's not actually better to have the widescreen. It's just a way they can sell you less, but you think you're getting something good, and it makes it awkward to do work. Scrolling up and down a lot because you don't have so much screen height. So this will be pretty similar inside. It's a grounding thing and a cover. So it grounds onto that pad area with some conductive foil tape. It says don't press or don't touch. Do not touch transparent tape, because it's going to damage those little connections onto the panel. I think this was the computer that the screen didn't turn on, so maybe it has a backlight issue. Similar deal, little driver board, some kind of chip, some sort of power supply that makes various voltages, and then these chip-on board thingies. And then there must be something going on down one of the sides again, like it was before. Yeah, there they are. Except you only need two this time because there's so many less pixels high on the screen. Should be able to get this all apart again, just for fun. See if we can do it without breaking the glass this time. I might have already broken the glass. There we go, it's coming off. The fluorescent tube will be in there. Or maybe it was, but we broke it. What's happened? Something's caught up here. Did we break the tube? No, it looks like it's still fine. Wow. Something's going on because this is stuck. Doesn't want to come out. Yep, it's come out. This end. Presumably it's snapped off. Don't know. Some kind of clippy things going on. More tape stuff. I think it's snapped off at both ends. Anyway, this is the frame. The fluorescent tube is in there. We broke the wire off one end of it, did we? Yeah. I don't think the tube broke. Yeah, it's still okay after all that. Just has the wire off one end snapped off. Probably can't be replaced easily. There's a little rubber bung thing over it. Yeah, another tube, there you go. It's all sort of glued into this tape stuff. Put that in our collection. So like before, there's the back part that the light shines through to get to the Apple. The perspex part which diffuses it, which is thick at one end and thin at the other end. The light will go in there and get reflected out by this grid. And then there's the various diffusers and lens thingies to make the light nice and even. And then the glass. Did we break it? Yeah, we broke it. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure we broke it. We don't know if it was broken before because the backlight never came on when I was testing this one. There you go. Okay, for some reason the recording cut off, but although luckily it was right at the end. I think it's because something I put down bumped on the mouse. Anyway, so the last thing that I remember I was talking about, so we looked at the screen, and that's exciting, and the last thing was take a look at this camera, this webcam from the Apple computer, and have a look at the stuff that's on there on the board, because it's interesting. It's got a little chip there, CY something or other, maybe Cypress semiconductor, and there's the LED, there's a crystal, some other little bits and pieces on the other side, bunch of components there, and this interesting connector. Interesting because it's got two large pins and 4 tiny pins. So the large two will be for the power, either 3.3 or 5 volts, and the other ones will be USB, and probably only 2 of them are used. Looks like it'll be that blue stuff there, will be the data on those other pins. I think that's 2 micro coax. That's usually the type of stuff they have for these display cables. And then there's this connector that goes to the camera part, which is in this thing. I wonder if it comes out. And it looks like it's glued in. And it was glued in. It's a tiny little camera, like cell phone style. Probably the lens can turn to focus it. A bit of glue on there. So under this, see where the image sensor will be soldered on the other side of the board there. Little flex. Oh no, there is a couple of components. It looks like some resistor networks and some capacitors. And then there's a connector which pushes onto there. I don't know why they made it in 2 boards. All the other webcams I've seen have been, the image sensor part has just been part of the main board. So there we go. That's the camera. We'll do the power supply teardown. This thing that I can't use because this plug's not the right one in another video. You see the good Apple quality there. It's pulling out. A lot of people seem to have that problem. I wonder if Apple makes these cords in a way that they pull out easily so that you have to buy another one and it costs a lot of money. They don't seem to put a nice molded strain relief on it like every other manufacturer does. Prevents it from breaking at that high bend point. See, this is old, it's been well used, still perfect. But the Apple ones, they seem to just fall apart. Or is it the people that are rough? Don't know. Anyway, I don't know if there's much else to talk about. Looked at motherboards. Was there anything else we needed to say about that? HP board. It's got through hole through the board. Ethernet. To help get it the same height. See, they didn't put a 4-pin firewire on the HP computer, but on the Apple computer they put the full 6-pin one, which includes power pins, not just the 2 data lines. Now I wonder what output voltage they've got there. Maybe 12 volts? Or maybe it's just the battery voltage. And the firewire can operate over a wide range. I think it's something like 9 to 30 volts is possible on the firewire ports, something like that. So the reason why they put the power on this is because then you can use the Apple Eyesight camera, this thing. Possibly the most over-engineered camera that was ever made. Wow, look at that. Yeah, so that's a firewire thing. It's got this tilt. There's microphones in there. It's IIDC. It's not a DV camera. It uses the IIDC protocol, which is used for machine vision stuff. Usually this will blue screen a Windows computer if you plug it into it, unless you have special or the correct drivers installed, which usually come with machine vision applications. Then you can use these on Windows, but the 640 by 480 is a pretty bad quality camera. I suppose it's good for when it came out. It's also got a really noisy and slow autofocus. I guess it's good that it has autofocus. Let's do a teardown of one of these in a upcoming video. I've got at least 4 of them, so probably wouldn't hurt to destroy one of them, even though they are quite nice. That's it for today. Hopefully that was interesting.